new features in JPA 2.1 as part of Java EE 7. It does support multiple new features, but one of the significant features in JPA 2.1 is stored procedure support. So we'll talk about what stored procedures are, and we are going to talk about how we can call stored procedures that take in and out parameters, and also stored procedures which return result set. So let's talk about the concept of stored procedures. So stored procedures are widely used in industry for multiple reasons. Performance is one reason, because everything is done on the server, so it could actually provide much better performance. A batch processing, you don't actually go through the request and response cycle from the client and the server, database server. You basically have everything, batch operation, the set of operations to be performed on the server. Security, if you do not want to expose some table contents to someone else and it's sort of only inside the database, and then that could be another reason to use the stored procedures. And accessing native database functionality. Some database has database specific functionality, and that could be accessible only through stored procedures. Okay? So stored procedures are widely used. Now, before JPA 2.1, the only way you can call stored procedures is by using native query. You basically construct the SQL statement that contains the native SQL calling stored procedures. Okay? And obviously that is not really type safe, right? So the reason you want to use JPA kind of API is because JPA is based on Java, provide type safety, okay? Meaning you should be able to detect any type mismatch problem at the compile time. Okay? So now JPA 2.1 supports calling stored procedures. It provides two different schemes. One is named stored procedure query, and the other one is a stored procedure query. And we're going to take a look at examples, both examples. In terms of stored procedures, there are two different types. One is stored procedures with in and out parameters, and the second type is stored procedures, which return result set. So let's actually see the first type of stored procedures first. Stored procedures with in and out parameters. Okay? Yeah, first, before we do the lab, we have to create stored procedure first. So that's the reason we are using MySQL, because a different database is using different kind of syntax for stored procedures. And for now, MySQL is actually more common database server we could use for creating stored procedures. So here we are creating stored procedure called compute8, and it takes the in parameter called x, which is the type of double. And it also takes the y, again, this is in, type is double, and then the result is going to be in sum, which is out parameter, and again, the type is double. And then we define begin and end, and basically we return the addition x plus y, and we are actually setting into sum. Okay, so sum is going to be containing the result of addition of x plus y. So a very simple stored procedure. So we are going to define this stored procedure in MySQL. Okay. Now, once that is defined, this is how you can call that stored procedure using what is called the named stored procedure query. So named stored procedure query is to define the named stored procedure like a compute8. Then we should be able to use it here. Okay, so here basically we are going to name it as a compute@, and then you're going to use a procedure name compute@. So compute_@, that is a real stored procedure name that you define right here. Okay, so that has to match. Okay, compute8, the name of this named stored procedure is actually in your program. That's the only place that you're going to use. Okay, like here. And then you are going to set parameters. So here we have set stored procedure parameter, and this is the mode. This is the in mode, and this is the out mode. And you specify the type, and then you specify the name. Okay, x, y, and sum. Okay, and now this is how you're going to suppose you have defined named stored procedure query like this somewhere on the entity class, and then you can call it someplace. So here we are going to call create named procedure query, and you provide the name of the named stored procedure query defined right here. And then you set the parameter x and y with, in this case, a double value, so 1.2D, 4.5D. Then we call execute on the query, so it will actually, call that stored procedure, and then you're going to get output parameter value of sum, and it will return the sum, and will actually display the value. Okay. So that is a named stored procedure query. So advantage of this one is once you define, the compute add named stored procedure query, then you should be able to use the one in many places. Okay. Now, if you want to define these things dynamically, then you can use stored procedure query. So you can actually use the create stored procedure query, and then you specify the name of the stored procedure. And then here you're going to actually set the stored procedure parameter x and y, the type, and parameter mode. So these 3 lines of code you have to actually duplicate whenever you're using this scheme. If you're using named version of it, then once you define it here, then you don't have to specify when you're using it. So that's an advantage. And here, we register those stored procedure parameter, and then we set the values for those parameters, and then we execute, and then we get the sum, and then we display. Okay. All right. So let's do exercise 1. So I have to actually start the MySQL. So I have already studied MySQL. So let's actually take a look at the documentation. So we are going to see the documentation here first. Okay. So open and labs and JPA features and index. Okay. All right. So this is the documentation we are going to use. Okay. So first we have to start MySQL. So I have already started MySQL here. Okay. So MySQL is up and running. Now we are going to create stored procedures. By the way, I provided these procedures of employee.sql file that contains this code. So you can see here, I'm actually defining multiple stored procedures like a compute 8, compute square, and things like that. So here we're gonna mostly focus on this guy, right? But once you run this one, it will actually create these stored procedures. Okay. So the let's actually go over here. So if you go to the labs and Java CD Java EE7, and here I provide SQL. Okay, so SQL scripts. Okay, so here why am I? Let's go to sample. Sorry about that. I want to actually go to this SQL scripts. So I provided this procedure employee.sql. So again, if you take a look at the procedures, employee SQL, it just SQL. Yeah, so it provides the SQL statement for creating compute add, compute square, and things like that. Okay, and we're gonna talk about these stored procedures later on, but for now, we're gonna mostly focus on this compute add stored procedures. Now, in order to execute this guy, okay, we have to go to we have to actually run MySQL client shell. So MySQL user is root and password is null. So it's going to ask me password. I'm going to just say return. And now we are in the MySQL shell. Okay, so that's basically what that I described over here. Okay, so we are going to actually use the database called the MyDB. Okay, so I think I already have MyDB. So let me actually delete it. I think it's dropped. database MyDB. Okay, so let me just drop it in case. Okay, so it's dropped. So we're going to create brand new one. Create database and MyDB. So we create a brand new database. Okay, and then we say use MyDB. So this is basically setting the default database that you want to use from this point on. And then I'm going to run that SQL. Okay, so I'm already in the SQL scripts directory, so I'm going to just say source, and then I provide the name of the SQL, so procedures and employee procedures employee.sql. Okay, so employee.sql. So it will drop all the existing procedures, and then you're going to create brand new. So you should be able to run this one multiple times. Okay, so it's going to just keep deleting it and then recreate them. Okay, so we are all set in terms of stored procedures. We should have these stored procedures created in MySQL. Okay, so now we are going to the exercise 1. So we're going to actually call compute add stored procedure using named stored procedure query. Okay, so you're going to actually run this Maven project. So you can see it's actually adding returns 5.7. All right, so let's run. I'm going to import the project first of all. Import and existing Maven project, and that should be the labs, and here samples Maven. Okay, so these are 4 sample project we are going to work on. So the first one is we are going to actually try the named stored procedure version. So we're going to actually right click and run as and Java application, and it will call MySQL database server stored procedure called the compute add, and it will return the result. Okay, so this is a main my package. Okay, and it should return 5.7. Okay, so just make sure that we are not lying. Let's actually change in the main, right? So here in main, we have basically we are calling create named procedure query, and that is called the compute add. And then we got the query object, and then we set the x and y, and then we execute and we just display the sum. Okay, and here if you take a look at the entity class, so here in the employee entity class we have defined this compute add. Okay, all right, so let's go to compute add, and I'm going to just change it to this value 11, just to make sure that this code is in fact executed. So it should return 15.7. Okay, so I'm going to change this one to 3, so it should actually return 15.5. Okay, so let's run this guy. Yeah, okay, so yeah, 15.5. All right, so that is actually using named stored procedure query. Okay. The next one is stored procedure query. So it should actually have the same result. Okay, so let's run this guy, Java application, and the main my package, and it should return again 5.7. So here we are actually calling other things as well. So let's actually see the code. So this one we did that, and we have created named stored procedure query definition here. This is the procedure name, and this is the name you can use in your code. So in your code that you're using compute add here. Okay. The next one is actually stored procedures. Yeah, so now we are using stored procedure query. So we are actually calling compute add, and we also actually call get employees by ID procedure and get employees by name procedure. Yeah, so that is actually something I haven't actually talked about. So get employee by ID and get employee by name procedure. Let's take a look at that. So here, yeah, get employee by ID is that you want to pass an ID, so as an input, okay, parameter, And basically, we are going to use that ID to get the information about the employee whose ID that we have used. Okay, so we have, I think, several employees, and we're going to just use the employee ID to get the value. And here, if I want to get the employee name, so here I just provide the employee ID, and then the name of the employee I want to get is going to be set to ename output parameter. So this is a select and into ename from employee, and then where employee ID equal EID. Okay, so those are two the stored procedures again, which take input and output parameter. Okay, so that is the this example. The one that this one. Okay, so this is a case that we created stored procedure query compute add, and then we have set the register stored procedure parameters x, y, and sum, and then we set the parameters, and then we execute, and then we get the sum, and we just display. Next one is get employee by ID procedure, and this is a result class. Okay, and then you are going to specify the again in parameter type, and we set the parameter to 1. And then when you call get result set, you're going to receive a set of employees. Okay, and then we have a for loop, just display that employee. Here, this is actually getting employee name. Okay, so employee name, get employee name procedure. This is the input type, and this is the output type. We set the input value to 1, we execute, and then here we get the output value and display. Okay, so let's actually run this guy. So this is a bit more complex than the previous one. So let's actually run as and Java application and the main my package, and then we should actually see the results. So yeah, that's the result we got. So we have 5.7, that's the compute add, and then get employee by ID, I passed 1, so that's the reason I got Sang Shin, whose employee ID is 1, and salary is 10,000. And then get employee name, so again, it will return Sang Shin. Okay, so just for the sake of this exercise, we are going to actually change these values and see whether we get the different result. Okay, all right, so here we are going to, you can see we have created 5 employees, right? Okay, all right, so let's so compute add, we are going to actually have 44. Okay, and then it should be 45 and 7, right? And in terms of getting employee ID, instead of passing 1, we'll actually get third person, so that should be Angela Caicedo. Okay, and then the employee name, so here we're gonna use the Angela, so I'll use 3 as employee ID, and let's run it. XJ. Okay, so you can see it returns 45.7, and it returns employee, third employee Angela, and then the return the employee name Angela Caicedo. Okay, all right. So I'm gonna let you guys do this exercise. I'll give you about 15 minutes because you might have to actually set up MySQL. Okay.